Imagine waking up one morning to find that everyone in your house has another version of themselves, a perfect double. What would you do if that happened? There was a young man named Jack and his girlfriend Sally. They were making dinner together while their dog, Jackson, kept barking because he wanted to go outside. Sally opened the door for him, then went back to finish cooking. Outside, Jackson started sniffing around a burnt spot in the yard, and suddenly a strange electric current struck him. He vanished instantly without a trace. Jack and Sally rushed outside after hearing the sound of electricity. They looked around and saw the dog was gone, but then they heard his barking coming from the top of the building nearby. When they looked up, they saw another Jackson standing there, an exact copy. That's when they realized the phenomenon was connected to a hole in the ground, which somehow caused the dog to duplicate. Frightened and confused, Jack decided to experiment. He threw one of his shoes into the hole to see if it would double, but nothing happened. Then they placed a plant in the same spot. Sally felt this time something real might happen. Seconds later, sparks of electricity flashed again, and suddenly two identical plants appeared. Sally couldn't believe what she was seeing. She couldn't sleep that night, constantly thinking about that strange hole and how it worked. The next day, Jack found Sally sitting next to the duplicated plant. She told him the hole could duplicate any living or organic thing. She said she had already tried it with meat, eggplant, and even a cake. When she wanted to eat the cake, Jack warned her it might be poisoned, but she laughed and said it was perfectly fine. Jack tried to discuss the strange soil with her, but she refused, saying, "It's better if no one finds out about it, or they might take it from us." Her response made him suspicious, so he told her to look at herself in the mirror and think about the consequences of using the hole. But when she did, a strange idea popped into her head. Later that night, Jack heard something break in the kitchen. He got up to check while Sally was asleep upstairs. When he went down, he was shocked to see another Sally cleaning up the broken glass. He brought both versions of her together, completely confused about who was the real one. So he asked, "Sally, do you remember where we went out last time?" Both answered exactly the same way. Jack frowned and said, "What you did, Sally, was a terrible mistake." The two Sallys just looked at each other in disbelief. The next morning, the real Sally was making breakfast when she heard the duplicate Jack laughing in the other room. She went upstairs and found him taking a shower with the other Sally. She was furious, but Jack said, "Come on, we do this every day." She snapped back, "Yes, we do, me and you, not you and her." Jealous and angry, she walked away. Jack followed her and tried to calm her down, saying, "You and your copy have the same memories and experiences, which means you're the same person. Honestly, I don't even know which of you is the original," she replied firmly. "I told you, I'm the original one." To prove it, she kissed him, right before the other Sally walked into the room. That night, Jack fell asleep between two versions of Sally. The next day, the two plants were still the same. Jack walked in and found the two Sallys laughing and watching TV. One of them asked him to make them something to eat. While he was in the kitchen, he looked at some old photos and realized that the hole was tearing their relationship apart. He began collecting all the duplicated food from the fridge and threw it away, which made one of the Sallys look at him strangely. That night, the two Sallys slept side by side while Jack felt like a stranger in his own home. The next morning, while fixing something in the ceiling, one of the Sallys came toward him, and he fell and died instantly. The two Sallys looked at his body, shocked and unsure what to do. They decided to hide his corpse in the closet. Soon after, one of the plants died, and so did one of the duplicated dogs. The remaining Sally said quietly, "I forgot to tell Jack to fix that dripping faucet." Then the two fell asleep on the table. The surviving dog came in and licked Sally's leg. She woke up smiling, happy about something she saw. She took the living duplicate plant with her and left the house, abandoning the dead Sally and the wilted plant. The story ends without us knowing whether the one who left was the real Sally or the copy. Later, we see a man named Google eating ice cream and listening to the radio. The news was talking about people who could change shapes and duplicate themselves. He looked at a photo of himself with his girlfriend Vera, then heard his front door creak open. When he went to the bathroom, he found two identical toothbrushes, even though he lived alone. He didn't know which one to use, so he just rinsed his mouth with mouthwash and left for work. At the office, he saw Vera, the girl he liked, and smiled dreamily. But when he noticed a picture of her fiancé on her desk, his smile faded, and he quietly looked away. The next morning, while having breakfast, he was watching a video of a woman talking about the multiverse theory. The host was using a piece of food to explain the idea and said, "In the fourth dimension, this sandwich would be just a thin line, with all its layers stacked perfectly on top of each other." A bit later, he met the assistant manager, named Gary, who complimented him and said nice things about his work. Booker was getting ready for the upcoming conference, but the next day he noticed a second version of Gary in the office. Everyone stood frozen in disbelief, staring at both Garys as they looked at each other in shock, wondering how this could even happen. Later that day, Booker was in the car with his friend Hugo, talking about all the strange things that were happening. Hugo said, "So you're telling me the company's hiring two Garys now? That's impossible. There can't be two assistant managers." Booker replied, "I noticed something similar. I found two identical toothbrushes at my place. That means my other version exists too, using my stuff, living my life, but I haven't seen him yet. Maybe he's hanging out with my friends and living as me without me even knowing." Hugo laughed and joked, "Your double won't be as awesome as you are." But Booker answered seriously, "Maybe he's miserable and pathetic." Suddenly, Hugo's phone rang, but the weird part was, the phone ringing wasn't in his hand, it was in his double's hand. Booker said in shock, "What are you waiting for? Answer it." So Hugo got out of the car to take the call, while Booker stayed behind, watching Vera and Brian leave toward their car. He decided to quietly follow them. Meanwhile, the news was talking about a global crisis caused by the duplication phenomenon. The reporter confirmed that this had nothing to do with space or scientific experiments. It was a glitch in reality itself. Some people were even using their doubles to skip out on responsibilities. Booker followed Vera and Brian's car until they stopped at a house. He stayed in his car, quietly watching. That night, while on hold with customer service, he glanced at the TV, but froze in shock when he saw his double sitting in his living room with a woman. He couldn't move, his body locked from fear. When the call finally resumed, he accidentally hung up in panic. He just sat there, staring at his other self in disbelief. On the TV, a news segment showed duplicated people, and even the anchor, Paul, had another version of himself right next to him on screen. The next day, Booker woke up to breaking news. Brian had killed his own double after finding out that the other one was with Vera. He was arrested immediately. The reporter explained this was the second known case of identity conflict caused by the duplication, and the third murder of the month related to it. When Booker heard Vera's name, he felt terrified for her, especially since she didn't show up for work that day. At lunch, Hugo mentioned Brian and Vera, saying Brian was in shock because technically he had killed himself. Booker replied, "Having another version of yourself, it's like being put to the ultimate test." Hugo nodded and said, "The minds of the original and the copy seem to be connected somehow. That's why the court couldn't convict Brian. The law doesn't even know how to deal with someone literally killing himself." Booker said quietly, "Yesterday I saw my double with a woman." Hugo looked stunned but tried to stay calm, then said, "Man, this whole thing is insane. If we were religious enough, we'd never believe it, like those stories about multiple hells." The idea of parallel hells terrified Booker. That evening, he tried calling Vera, but her phone was off. The next day, Hugo told him not to worry, that she just needed time to recover from the shock. Then the boss sent Booker to help with some office work. At the office, Booker noticed Gary's double talking to Vera. He sat down, trying to process it, thinking maybe this was another version of her too. The boss approached him and said, "Booker, Help Vera get settled and show her how things work here. So Booker took the chance and asked her out for lunch. She said yes. During lunch, he couldn't stop looking at her. They got along naturally, their connection deepening fast. Later, he told Hugo, "Honestly, I really like Vera. Even though we've only gone out twice, I feel something real." Hugo smiled and said, "Your feelings are real, man. You clearly know her better than you think." Encouraged, Booker continued seeing her. They sat together in his car playing word games, getting closer, until she leaned in and kissed him softly. Then they went for a walk, laughing and eating ice cream together. But when they arrived at Booker's house, they both froze. There was another Booker sitting there, eating ice cream and holding the same photo we saw at the beginning of the movie. Both of them dropped their ice cream, staring in total shock. At that moment, they realized their lives had become a repeating time loop, where people kept living the same moments in endless cycles across parallel realities. And in the final scene, we understand that the opening shot we saw earlier was from a previous version of Booker, and that the ending is the start of another loop, meaning a new Booker is now living it all over again. The cycle never ends in this mirrored universe. And that's how our movie ends for today. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel.